Trenton, it's a pleasure to talk with you today. Congratulations on all your successes with National Cyber League and how that has helped you get where you are today. I always like to start the interview with the backstory. So how did you find out about the National Cyber League and how did you decide to play?
So I joined SIU in August of 2016, and one of the first things I found out about there that because I came there for their CCDC team, because I'd done CCDC at my community college for 2 years, and then when I got there, we trained for a bit, and then they mentioned, oh, there was this other competition. I don't even know if they called it a CTF at the time or whatnot, because I don't think I knew about CTFs as a thing. But they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this. Who else is interested? And I was like, oh, cool, another cyber competition. Yeah, I'll do it. And so I did the individual portion for that first fall season, and that was pretty fun. And I enjoyed it a lot, and it was like very new to me.
What was your first season? What year?
That would, I think, yeah, fall. It would have been fall of 2016.
2016. And what was it like playing for the first time?
Extremely intimidating. Like it's, I mean, there's some, like, I think there's a lot of like just base level knowledge that'll get you a long way just by sheer determination and like really sticking with it. But you definitely hit like those stumbling blocks. It was just like, I had never worked with like binary exploitation at all. Like I wasn't a computer science major. Like just doing that was not like in my natural skill set. I was definitely.
You never had a class that prepared you for this?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's like for like almost any major. I think you're going to come in there, you're going to hit things that just are outside the wheelhouse of like whatever you teach. Even if your school might teach one thing and then another school might teach another.
So it's my feeling that we have an advantage with competitions over classes.
Mm-hmm.
What I have found with most students is that they stress more in a class and they have more passion when they play in a competition. A competition is not a grade. It's not something that affects your standing. It's not something that is a GPA. And so when you take a class, I suppose you always have that in the back of your mind, will I get a good grade? NCL's different. Competitions are different. You played CCDC as well. It's more, am I going to represent my school? Am I going to represent my team? Is my team going to do well against another team? Do you like that more? Do you like the pressure of a competition more than the pressure of a classroom?
Oh yeah, personally, yes. And I think the joy, and that's what a real joy of like having these options available. Because like, I mean, obviously students who don't enjoy that are going to get things out of school, hopefully regardless. But like the student, I know at least I prefer like having some pressure and like really being able to like just keep hitting stumbling blocks until I can't anymore. And I think that in school, that's like, some of those stumbling blocks are the kind that you like and some are you don't. And I think most of the ones in a competition are the kind that I like.
Do you like knowing you're going up against other people?
Yes, it's really fun. I mean, I'm a competitive person, so it's fun just like watching, like trying to get every last little point and strategizing.
What's it like playing as an individual versus playing on a team?
I mean, I think a team is a lot more management. I mean, I think a lot of the things go the same way, right? Like you need at some point you're just going to have someone who can solve the problem. So a lot of the team is like trying to learn people's strengths and like assigning to them to the tasks that they're going to be the most efficient on. Because at the end of the day, a lot of NCL is a game of time. Like you can solve a lot of the problems, but eventually you're going to run out of time. And so like, cause you can research something in competition and that's half the fun for me, like getting these like weird things. And it's like, if this isn't a normal thing you've already have learned, you have to learn it. And so it's very much time management oriented, finding people's strengths and like playing to them.
One of the questions I get asked a lot, especially by players that are new, how much time do I need to spend on NCL?
It's a dangerous question. No, I think it really just comes down to as much as you're willing to invest. Like obviously if you want to place in the top 10, like you're especially like your first few years, I think you're going to have to like really devote your weekend to it. But like honestly, by the time I did like my last semester when I did get first, I was like working and like half the time and it was just like I would just think about some of the problems while I'd work or whatever. And so it became a lot less stressful and time intensive when I like knew better how to manage it.
And I think that question is related to what I have to do in a class. So I'm sure students do time management with their classes and think, well, how many hours a week do I have to study and how many hours a week do I spend on homework?
Mm-hmm.
But it's different because you are playing. You have the opportunity to play no matter what. You know, you spend 10 minutes a week, you're still playing. You spend 10 hours a week, you're playing and obviously have a chance to do better. But it does get to the point is in terms of how much do you want to try and accomplish in competition. It really does take someone who's a bit competitive to do well.
Mm-hmm.
Are you competitive in the classroom, or is it just a different experience?
A little of both, and it depends on like the classroom. Like I know like the first time I did like a programming class was at a community college, and then for whatever reason I took a similar class at SIU, and it was like I think the second time I was like, well, I've already learned most of this, so this time I'm just gonna like add my own challenges to every little assignment to make it interesting, because otherwise you'll go insane.
We bracket players in NCL. We have you go through a preseason, and then we bracket you into gold, silver, and bronze. And one of the reasons we do that is we realize that if we had all players, including all the new players, at the same level, it could intimidate new players, and maybe it wouldn't be challenging enough for the best players. So do you like knowing that you're going to go through a preseason based on that? You're going to be matched up with your peers in terms of the equivalent level of talent?
Yeah, it's neat, and it's interesting how that's been adjusted over the years, especially the postseason stuff. I think that's a little more. It's much more helpful to me there. I mean, personally, I think I've made gold all the years, so I never ended up in the situation where I was like, I feel like I'm super out, like I'm competing at a different level. But I know like when we were doing postseason, it was like, oh, okay, all right, we know like the general team level, so it's nice to compete at that level and like think about it that way.
You made gold the first time you played?
I think because I think that was like I think that was when all you had to do was like basically get 100% in preseason, and I think I got it like with like 10 minutes left before preseason ended.
What is the best thing about the challenges? What do you like most about trying to solve an NCL challenge?
Just coming back like every year and like finding that one category you couldn't do like the first year. Like I mentioned binary exploitation was like the worst one. I didn't do that until my very last semester where I sat down, I was like, I'm gonna learn assembly because it's tough. And luckily I think there's a lot more free tools out there now to be able to do that with like Ghidra coming out. And some of that was like, what else? Web apps, like that's another one where you just have to like really kind of learn that and devote your time to that.
So you know who Caitlin Bestenheider is, Crypto Kate.
Yeah.
So when Kate played for the first time, it was very, challenging for her, but she found an area she really loved. Cryptography. So that is a reason she became Crypto Kate. An area you really love to play the challenges in?
The binary ones I like just because I've evolved so much on them, and so that's been the fun. I think the web apps have had the most entertainment. But I want to say network traffic analysis just because it's the most unique category to NCL. Like no other CTFs really do that, and I think it's one of the most like useful categories, and like no matter what like major you're going into, if you're into cybersecurity or like what kind of job you're going into, because that like whether you're like I went into a system engineer role, and like the amount of times that I went and said, all right, let's bust out TCP dump or Wireshark and like really get into it, because you can solve a lot of problems that way.
Do you like Wireshark?
That's a loaded question. Some of those challenges made me hate it, but yes, it's fun. It's a really powerful tool. And I mean, we didn't really use TCP dump in the competition, but like the same general principle of like learning how to filter things effectively.
When you started to make the transition from being a student to being a working professional, how did NCL play into that? How did NCL help you perhaps give you a bit of an edge over other applicants that had never played competitions?
I mean, it's like whenever I've done interviews, like between like CCDC and NCL, it's like you've got a lot of the answers to like what are your proudest moments, what's the time you've worked in a team or something. Like I remember this job I just recently started. They're like, oh yeah, what's your proudest accomplishment? I was like, well, I did really well in NCL in both the team portion and the individual portion, and that felt great from both an individual perspective and like a leadership perspective, and that was great. And just like the amount of like tools, like especially compared to like other competitions, NCL is a very broad range of things for someone who's interested in cybersecurity, but not necessarily doing it as their job.
What has been the employer response to your description of NCL?
I mean, I think a lot of it's just like pride, and it's like I think it shows an individual drive in a way that other things don't.
Do they like the fact that you are doing this outside the classroom? Do they think NCL sounds like it's a good addition to whatever else you do?
Yeah, I know a lot of them were just like really proud, and I know when I did that after I did well, I know a lot of the people at my internship were like, oh, look what Trenton did. But yeah, I think it's a nice little addition to like say what you've done and what you're willing to spend your time on.
In terms of your jobs that you've had, have you run into other colleagues that have played NCL, and have you shared NCL experiences?
I don't know that I have. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think I've ever mentioned it to anyone who I know would be in that category.
Okay.
I mean, besides people who I went to school with who were on my team.
When you played, did you spend much time in the Slack channel?
Tons.
What is the Slack channel like during the game?
I think it's just a really fun way to like how it's hard because it's like, when you're all like saying like, oh, what are you like, what you're stuck on, and it's like the game of like trying not to like spoil anything or give any answers while like, and it's also fun just because it's a super helpful way to know like if you're stuck on a problem to like watch something there, and just like maybe sometimes very occasionally you'll have like questions where there's just multiple answers, and maybe there's one they didn't think of, and I've had that on occasion where you just submit it and they're very helpful about getting that done, and that's one of the helpful things. Also, it's just really fun. Like there's some light craft talking, and
I think sometimes playing competitions can be kind of solitary and an isolating experience, but what we try to do with NCLs is make it a shared experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And we know in the channel during the game you can't give answers to the game, but do you feel like when you're in the channel you're kind of alongside them playing?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it makes it especially satisfying at the end when you can actually go into like a channel and like discuss everything that you did to solve everything and learn all the answers.
So the after discussion, is that an interesting experience in itself? Oh, I got it right. Oh, why didn't I do this?
Oh yeah, and even just like the different ways people solve the same problem. Like you'll have like people who solve one thing with like code, or someone who has like an actual dedicated program. Like there was one year where it was like a challenge where you had to like construct an image from coordinates, and I didn't even know what it actually was, but I just like written my own implementation, and someone was like, oh yeah, it's just this program called Image Magic, and I'm like, well, I'm glad I know that now.
Last fall, Victor Torres won for Cal State Chico, and Cal State Chico did a really cool video on him, a Vimeo. What he said he did to win the individual game, on the last puzzle, he spent 12 hours.
Yeah, that's kind of ended up how it being. Like you try and like bust through the easy ones as quick as possible, because it's at the very end when you're going to need to spend like a few hours per challenge. Like I know I was working right up till 7 p.m. doing web apps, and like, okay, all right, I know this one's solvable.
What is the most time you spent on a single puzzle?
I think I spent like 3 or 4 hours on that last one. That's also very hard because there's stuff like password cracking where like you have to start it on day one, so you have time to like solve it by the end. I think that was one I spent like a good amount of time on in terms of just like towards the end.
How does that help you in your regular job? The ability to focus for hours on something that is a particular issue It's not the project you're spending that on. You're spending that much time on just one aspect. Is that a quality that helps you in the workplace?
I mean, yeah, that's a lot, almost entirely what IT is about, like figuring out why this one little program won't start or whatever. And I mean, it's all going to come in different forms. It's not always going to be like how many people SSH into this server or whatever, right? But like being able to like troubleshoot and like really focus on like one problem and what are your possible avenues to solve it.
I think
That's
sometimes in school, we teach you how to get the right answer. When you're writing a program, for example, the goal of writing that program is to have the program work. It's not how well it's been tested. It's not have you found all the bugs. You know, it's not how it would stand up against an attack. But in NCL, we want you to go further than just getting something right. We really want you to go under the hood, and we force you, I think, to do more and to see how things break as well as how things work. Do you like breaking or building?
I think it's both.
What's the difference between CCDC and NCL?
CCDC is very much sysadmin competition with like an element of like understanding cybersecurity. It's a very good environment for that, but I think it's just very different. You very rarely need to do anything offensive. I think we did have like one password cracking challenge, and I was like, "Brooks, on you! I cracked these passwords on the practice thing." But it's yeah. I think the NCL is much more balanced between like it's a nice middle actually between like straight up CTFs that I've done and like CCDC, where CCDC is very much more on the sysadmin side. CTFs are much more on the like binary exploitation, very specific challenges, and I think CTF is much NCL is much more like my experience actually doing like a cyber analyst position for an internship.
Is there some nice synergy going on between the sysadmin type of competitions and the CTF where you get to do offense? Do you recommend that students play both because they both have value?
Oh yeah, and especially, I mean, if you enjoy both, definitely do both. And I think it was nice just having both available for like some people are like the problem solvers who like to do stuff like NCL and they thrive in that, and they didn't really want to do the very much team stressful environment. Like NCL is fun and relaxing. CCDC is a stressful experience. Like I think it sells itself on that, and I don't mind saying it.
Mm-hmm.
It's preparing you for that worst day in IT, I think is the catchphrase I've heard some people say.
Mm-hmm. I just believe in the value of competition.
Oh yeah.
I believe it brings out the best when it's done well. You know, healthy competition is one of the best things for us. Competition that isn't as healthy is not as, but NCL we really strive to make it a fun experience. It's not just who wins, we want everyone to feel like they're part of the NCL community and that it's a very cool community to be part of. Do you have any advice for NCL in the future?
For NCL, the organization?
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough. Sorry, I didn't actually think of something for this. I think a lot of it, I like the fun I had was just like the gradually escalating things. And I think, especially in recent years, it's been better and better about having like every category have like a really good hard challenge. And I think that's gotten better, and I hope it will keep getting better as long as you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But using those report scanning, you can do a lot of things that you can't do on like a low rural internet connection. And I think I know that's a big struggle in like gaming, but I think it's also a struggle in some competitions like these where you don't have the internet connection to be like port scanning thousands and thousands of ports. And I mean, that also helps with people whose internet connections just don't let you do that. I think if NCL could get better about making sure people know what the line is between buying a $5 a month VPS cheating. I don't think it is. I think it's just buying an alternate ISP, but I don't know. And I know at CCDC to me has struggled a ton with like clarity of rules. And I think not having clear rules can often create a situation where a competition feels like more who can cheat the least cheaty way rather than focusing on, the actual competition and the spirit of solving the problem. okay, just because we're in entertainment doesn't mean we're totally out of the we're still targets. Like, we're nation state hackers. That's crazy.
Mhm.
That's something like a movie company has to deal with, but it is now. Like, you never know when you will become the target of people who have vast amounts of resources.
You know, I want to ask you this question, which is probably something that you haven't thought much of. And so, if you're a company, when you do cybersecurity, it's pretty much all defense. It's defending
Hmm.
against the attackers. If you're in the government, if you're in the military, especially, then you can do offense.
Hmm.
Have you ever thought that maybe companies should be able to do offense if they're under attack?
Um, maybe I think there's so much like wiggle room. I mean, in some ways, yes. I think there's like reasonable things you can do that could be considered offensive, but I mean, in general, no. What are you what are you gonna do? Like, try and hack back the boxes that are hacking you? I think, unfortunately, the reality is a lot of cybersecurity now is you're not necessarily defending against the person who's attacking you. I mean, oftentimes they're gonna attack you from people they've already attacked. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in which case, trying to attack back, you're just attacking some old lady's computer who they got compromised. Not,
Someone who's being used for the attack.
yeah. No, I don't. I think there's a time for fun in the competitions, and I don't necessarily think it's a good idea for people to hack back.
Yeah, but it's frustrating when you are being attacked.
Oh yeah. Nah. The cultural thing, though, that's I know it's a tough thing, going from like spending your waking hours thinking about cybersecurity to like, I want to solve this one problem, and you're like looking for every little avenue. I know one of my top moments that I got to use NCL was there was like some program.
Trenton, it's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Look forward to staying in touch,
All right.
and look forward to sending you the edited version for review.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.